this is an intimate discussion on the McKay Scholarship because many of you have requested to learn more about what the McKay Scholarship is and how students obtain it and things like that. So I'm going to go over the basics of the McKay Scholarship, and then I have a couple of resources that I use to gather my information, and then we'll talk through if you guys have specific questions about clients you're working with or some situations that may have happened before that you would like to talk through. We will do that. I am not an expert on the McKay Scholarship. That is my little disclaimer. So if I tell you that I do not know something, I will find out because we have a state contact with Tallahassee. So if there's something that you guys ask that I don't know, I will just call Scott and find out and let you guys know. And he's usually pretty good about getting back with me. So just let me know, if it's for a current case, and I'll make sure to get back with you as soon as I can. Does that make sense? Can everyone see? If not, rearrange yourselves. All right, good. So the McKay Scholarship 101. What is the McKay Scholarship? It was created in 1999, and it is designated to provide scholarships to students who have disabilities who either would like to attend another public school, which is something that people don't realize, or a private school. Did you guys know that your McKay Scholarship can be used for another public school?
No.
So let's say that your child is assigned to Greenland Pines, and your child has an IEP or a 504 plan, and you're not, for whatever reason, I don't want to say not satisfied, but you would like to utilize, just keep it in school. You would like to explore your options with your parental choice. You can request that your child attend a school in another district or another school within the public school. When you do that, you are still utilizing your McKay choice option. So it's not like you could utilize your choice to go to another school and then change your mind 2 days later. You would be stuck at that school kind of like how you would be at a private school. And we'll talk more about that.
Marlena, but you would be paying, they would not be paying them, right?
No, the state would send the funds, but if you use your school choice right, it is like you're going to a private school in the sense that you have to be there for the full FTE year. So if you were to say, I go to Greenland Pines and my child has an IEP and I just want to explore my options, so I want them to go to Mayport Elementary. The first day they set foot at Mayport Elementary is just like the first day that they were to set foot at Keystone. So they have to stay at Mayport for that full FTE year. Otherwise, they can't jump back around. They've lost that funding source for that year. So it's just like you're using your McKay choice, but the money still goes to the public school. Does that make sense?
What's FTE?
It's your attendance count. I don't know. We're gonna Yeah. Yes. No. McKay Scholarship.
If you switch schools, so if you go to one
Any school you switch to, and you're utilizing your McKay option 4, you have funding every year you're there. You have to stay there for that year. If you decide to pull your child and go back to the public school, your child has to stay in that year for their year of eligibility. So, kind of to break it down, should we start over?
This is like the part where
Megan's being absurd here.
Should I start over?
the wrong way. No, keep going. You're doing a great job. What? No, it's great. You sound wonderful. It's just
I'm
the video.
Marlena, and this is McKay Scholarship 101. We're going to start back where we were. So Victoria was asking, so you can use the McKay Scholarship at another public school. And I was saying, yes, you can. But if you go to a public school, it is just like this, and you utilize your McKay choice, it is just like you were using your private school choice. So if you decide to withdraw your child from Mayport after you transferred from Greenland Pines, they have to do another year of eligibility to think of it like they have to rebank their funds. Because during that year, the public school has to update their IEP, has to submit it to Tallahassee, has to lock in their matrix. All of those things have to happen. So you're reestablishing eligibility. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Did that answer your question? Yes.
Can students move schools at all during the school year? Like we have kids that
You can move whenever you'd like, but it's just depending upon whether or not you're using McKay funds or you're just using your parental choice to move them. And also, if you move outside of the district's guidelines that they've given you, then you're responsible as a parent for transportation. Whereas if the public school said, like let's say there was a child who had dual sensory impairment and their neighborhood school that they were assigned to, so I say neighborhood, but the school that the district placed them at, was not able to meet their services and their needs. Not based on the parent's discretion, but these schools said, we cannot provide the services that your child has been assessed to need, then the school will provide transportation for them to go to the school that they feel is appropriate. The parent may not feel it's appropriate, and that's where the parent has to then say, I will transport my child because I want to activate my school right, my school choice, right as a parent. So I am choosing to say I live in Mandarin, but because I want my child to go to Mayport, I will drive them to the beach. Whereas if the school board said, you live in Mandarin, the closest available school to meet your child's designated services is Mayport, then they will drive, the school, public school system will transport your child from Mandarin to Mayport. Does that make sense? And you can do that as long as you, as a parent, are able to drive back and forth. You have to renew your school choice every year if you're at a public school, because the seats are based on their specific zoned students. So let's say Mayport, for your child, that 1 year, Mayport had 5 spots available, but then the next year they don't because more families move into their specific zoned area, then your child would not be able to use their school choice because they don't have room. They have to provide their full zone students first, and then they can accept other students that are not in their zone area. Does that make sense? Okay, eligible diagnoses. These are pretty much all the diagnoses that we serve, but you have to be specific in how you word them. So if someone were to write dyslexia or dyscalculia on the IEP, that in itself is not covered. But if you have a specific learning disability, and then under that your secondary diagnosis is noted as being something more specific, then yes, that child will be eligible to receive their full IEP range of services, and thus they would be eligible to receive the McKay Scholarship. If they had a 504 plan, they can receive funding as well. The 504 plan is less intensive as an IEP. It strictly lists out just the accommodations and the disability. It does not list out all the related services. It does not list out the fullness of the frequency, the training of the staff, the intensity of the service being offered as your full IEP would. So if you have clients that are receiving a 504 plan, it is a nice gateway to an IEP, but it's not going to provide the wealth of funding nor service range that a full IEP would provide. And that was an example of eloping that just took place, and that could possibly receive funding. I think it could for a one-on-one, I think. But take a look at all these diagnoses: speech language impairment, a dual sensory impairment, so that's your students that may be deafblind, Down syndrome and blindness or deafness, specific learning disabilities, social emotional diagnoses, autism spectrum diagnoses. You look at all of your cognitive realm of things falling under the intellectual disabilities, and then some students you may see on their IEP. If you guys have, who all has seen a public school IEP? Raise your hand. Okay, so if you have not seen a public school IEP, we could find one to send you, or I can send you some little boys that I happen to maybe know have written, and you can review it. So you'll see a primary diagnosis, and you'll see any secondary diagnoses that are noted. One of those diagnoses, preferably your primary one, needs to be the one that will make you eligible for services. Because if both of them are just things that require only accommodations, then they're only going to write the bare minimum, and you're not going to even receive funding really worth the paper that it's written on. Okay? Does that make sense? If anyone wants to know how you can get diagnoses changed, so we have here 4 people from our testing department: Katie and Andrew and Jackie and Erica. And a lot of times families will come here to Keystone because maybe their child has a developmental delay noted because they're 5 years and under, and now they need to determine what is going to be the diagnosis that will carry them through their school years, so until they turn 22, so they can come here to receive testing. Or every 3 years, there's a triennial re-eval that has to take place, and that's where the public school says, we've been working off of this IEP for 3 years now. It may or may not still be appropriate, but we're going to redo everything to see what's changed. So at that point, parents can go through the public school and say, okay, we want you guys to assess our child, or they can choose privately, and that's what a lot of them will do. They'll come here and they'll say, can you guys reassess my child? I think that their diagnosis has changed, or I think that they could be receiving more services, or their situation's so different because they were 5 when they were tested and now they're 8, and so look at all the things that have changed. And so we will provide those assessments. When an assessment is provided by a licensed entity, the public school only can do the pieces that were not done. So they can't just redo everything because they want to have it redone. If we did a full battery, and they're pretty thorough, they'll ask why do you need this? Is it just because you're the parent? Do you want to know? Or is it because you want to submit this for review? So if we do a full battery of assessments, and then that's submitted to the public school, and the public school doesn't like what it means for them, they can't just say we want to ignore and we want to kind of wash and redo. It's our what's the word I'm looking for? No. It's the parent's right to have that assessment be the one that sustains. Like, the public school can't just throw it out. If for some reason they do duplicate, then they have an obligation to review both of them and determine which services are appropriate for that child. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, and it's not on the list, so it might be a dumb question, but if the student is identified as gifted.
Oh yeah, gifted only. That's on my
That's
next.
under ESE.
That's on my next. It's on the next slide. A student who only has gifted on their plan would not be eligible for McKay funding on their eligibility plan. Now, if they have other things listed that warrants having a full IEP, that would. But just gifted alone, and the eligibility plan is different than your full IEP. That's just what gets you saying that you may be eligible for services. If it's just gifted and no other things, they can get a 504 maybe with the accommodations, but it wouldn't make them that alone eligible. Yes, ma'am.
So if they are gifted, that qualifies them for an IEP?
It can qualify them for the services, but it doesn't translate into McKay dollars. For some reason, gifted is different in the sense. I honestly don't know why they feel like it's different. But if there's no other things going on, they're straight gifted, everything else is normal, and they're needing no accommodations that would sustain an additional service outside. I can't, because it's still a specialized service. There's no additional service needed to bring them up to grade level. Then they don't receive those the funding.
So if at a later time, let's say 3 years later, they're diagnosed with ADHD or ODD, now my question is, they've already got an IEP for gifted, we need accommodations for those other diagnoses. Can we put those on the IEP, or are they going to force us into a 504?
No, if they already have an IEP and you guys or somebody reassesses and says, oh, this child has a social emotional deficit, and you kind of spin it and say, this is the primary, this is what's impeding them from performing to their full potential, because look, they're gifted, they could be performing, above average, but these other social emotional factors are the true accommodating reason. Have that noted as primary, that would then get them funding under the social emotional, and gifted would be their secondary diagnosis. But that's going to be the hard. That's where it gets messy.
They want to push you to the power.
Yeah.
They don't want to give you the
Try to, if you try, and it's hard. It's hard because if they're not performing at grade level, everybody wants to help. But if they are performing at grade level, but they have other, environmental things going on, it's difficult to get that funding. So, who is eligible to participate? Any student who is enrolled in either the school that they are assigned to by their neighborhood zoned area or by special assignment, if the student has spent that full year prior to attendance in the public school. Students who are 4 years old who are in a public school can receive funding when they turn 5. So you have to be 5 by September 1st. But we have a couple of kids that maybe they were here for pre-K and we dismissed them because they're 4 years old now, and maybe they've been assisted with getting an IEP in a public school so that they could receive eligibility for McKay funding when they turn 5. If you have a student who is 3 years old, they can attend a public school in their pre-K developmental disabilities program, but they're that 3-year-old year from 3 to 4, it doesn't help them do anything. It doesn't help with eligibility. It just puts them in a school and it brings them into contact with peers. But if a parent is looking, because they know the ultimate decision that they're gonna make is to put them in a private setting or to move to another public school that maybe they don't currently live near, they need to have been in school that full 4-year-old year, and then that 5-year-old year, that 4-year-old year makes them eligible. Every other scenario, so you're 8 years old, you just moved from Georgia, you come to Florida, you enroll in a public school, you're 8 years old, your full year from October to February, you would need to be in that public school to make yourself eligible. Now, if you're a military family, though, and you're from out of state or you've relocated, then you can be eligible. The parents have to submit paperwork showing you that you had military relocation. I don't know why I stuttered a little bit there. And then you would be eligible. Does that make sense?
But it's just public school, right? You have to.
This is how you become eligible
Right,
for the
public
McKay.
school.
Yep, public school or an approved VPK site, which is why that back there is going to be happening. Because in essence, we could have students here that are 3 years old, go to the VPK, 4 years old,